Hey there, everybody. Thank you for coming back to our part two on dealing with Chihuahua separation anxiety. Um, there's couple of things I need to go through with you before we start. And obviously, I want to do a recap on what we covered in our last session. So I'm just very quickly, crazy hair today. I'm just very quickly going to go over what we talked about in our last session. I'm probably going to throw quite a lot at you. So it might be a good idea to get yourself a pen and pencil so you can write some of these ideas and concepts down. And it's my intention to give you a game plan, if you will, that will enable you to start working with your Chihuahua to reduce and stop this separation anxiety. So, in our last session, we looked at what it actually was, what the output behavior was that our Chihuahua was giving us. So, that could be panting, licking, pawing, chewing, barking, whining, destruction, that kind of stuff. So, those are the kind of behaviors that our dog gets involved in when they're anxious and when they're struggling. And we also talked about our Chihuahua's emotional buckets. So, I'll just put an example of that up. So, this is a concept we use a lot in Chihuahua School, and it's not just used for dogs; it's used for people as well. And your emotional bucket is kind of how you behave is dependent on how full your emotional bucket is at the time and what's paid into it. Now, with dogs, it's actually worth noting that good excitement plays into this as much as anxiety. Okay, so that is something to think about because your Chihuahua could have had the best time on the beach that day, but their bucket is still going to be really, really full. And when one more thing happens that they do not have the capacity for, you are going to get an overspill behavior. So, helping your Chihuahua grow calm, looking at your whole Chihuahua's lifestyle and routine, and looking at how you're going to grow calm for your dog is really important. Because if your dog is in a constant high state of arousal, we can't communicate with them, we can't teach them, and we just can't basically do anything with them in the same way that we can't communicate with a child having a tantrum. So growing calm is another big subject, okay? And it's something that we talk about a lot in Chihuahua School. So I just don't have time to go over everything there, but we did talk about it very briefly yesterday about the most important is making sure that your Chihuahua gets plenty of rest and that they have suitable activities to do which pay into their mental health. So if you didn't watch yesterday's recording, then go back and do that. So making sure that your Chihuahua has plenty of rest, um, good stuff to do, etc., is going to make a big difference to their mental health. Okay, let's just get rid of that. Okie doke. So another couple of key concepts that I need to go over with you, and this one is vital and it's really important, but it's often really, really misunderstood, and that is working for the situation and not in it. Now, I quite often as a trainer, when I go out and I work with someone and I find out they've been trying to train their dog when the thing that they're trying to train out is actually happening. So, for an example, I had a client whose dog would go jump at people at the door, and we were trying to lower arousal around the doors, but she was conducting the training when people came in, when there were surprise visitors or people came in the door. And now that is training in the situation. Okay. We don't do that for all the reasons that when we're not going to try and train our dog when they're in that they ask me words when they're in a high state of arousal because they're not in the right headspace. We train for the situation. We put the skills in that your dog needs so that when the situation arises, then they have the skills to deal with it. Okay. And that is a huge, huge difference. Now, if your Chihuahua is barking out the window, we don't deal with it at the point your Chihuahua is barking out the window. We deal with we look at the situation. Why is your dog just to give you a heads up, if you don't know me, I do have a little bit of a speech impediment. Um, so we deal with the why is your dog barking out the window? What is actually going on with them there? And that's where we start to fix it. We look at the why. We then look at the management, okay, so they can't rehearse. So all of these things are really, really important. So generally, it's absolutely essential that we are not trying to train our dog when they are performing the behavior we don't want, okay? Okie doke. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about is triggers, okay? Now, triggers are they drive a huge amount of behavior because triggers and prediction are tied up together. Your dog's ability to predict what is going to happen next based on what you're doing or something that's happening in the house is absolutely phenomenal. Okay. They are really, really good at it. And you might notice this when you're going to go out for a walk, that your dog gets really excited when you get the harness out, or they start to get really excited as you move towards where you store the harness, or they might get really excited because this can track right up. They are so good at this. Okay. They just when you put the relevant coat on to go out for a walk, all of those things then become triggers that then start to create an emotion depending on how your dog feels about that situation. So that we looked at this briefly yesterday. So our dog is relatively calm. Okay. Now they're not going to be, we don't expect them to be lying there doing nothing comatose all day, but they're not in a high state of arousal. They might be doing something um, that they enjoy, like on a lick mac or have a bone or something like that. So then they start to predict what you're doing. Okay. So they start to see what you're doing. You're moving about, you're putting your coat on, you're putting your shoes on. They kind of go, okay, they're going out. And then the dog's arousal level will start to go up. Okay. So depending on how they feel about what's going to happen next will definitely start to affect their behavior. So triggers are huge, okay? And desensitizing triggers is a little bit tedious. I'm not going to lie, okay? It isn't something that you can do in a couple of minutes. But one of the first things you need to think about is all the triggers that are involved in your going out the door, okay? All the things that your chihuahua is watching for. Now, they can be really, really tiny little things that you miss. So sometimes it's a good idea to get another person to film the situation. So you are going to film yourself getting ready to go out, and someone is going to film what your dog is actually watching. Now, from that, you should be able to create yourself a trigger map. Okay. And from that trigger map, you can look at all the different things that are going to create this high arousal and this anxiety in your dog. So that's very likely to be putting your coat on, um, putting your shoes on, getting your keys. It might be a certain bag. It might be a routine you go through. Like I go to the loo, I brush my hair. I actually had a client that I was supposed to meet over the park. It wasn't with a chihuahua, but we were meant to meet over the park. And her dog was, I'm going to go a little absolutely crazy. Okay. And the reason it was absolutely crazy, I won't go into, but it really had a big issue with going out. So we'd arranged to meet over the park. We'd done quite a lot of work with the dog at home and we felt it was ready to go out. And then she rang me and she said, I can't bring the dog. The dog is absolutely having a total meltdown. And what had happened is she'd gone upstairs, she'd gone to the loo, and she'd put a comb through her hair and she'd sent me a text to say she was leaving. Now, that dog recognizes that routine as we're going out now. Okay. Because she hadn't desensitized that part of the routine and the anxiety went up. I mean, she couldn't even get the dog out the door. Okay. So it's really important that you understand the trigger map and you start to desensitize those triggers. And there is not a really easy way to do this. It is a little bit tedious, but it might look a little bit like this. Okay. So ignore that for the moment. Ignore the throwaway triggers. So your everyday triggers might be your coat, your boots, your keys, your bag, routines or whatever. So you need to start desensitizing those. Okay. And it could even be as simple as you just standing up. Okay. Or you slapping your thighs. We all go, when we're working at our computer, we just go right and we get up. Okay. So just that noise can be a trigger for our dogs. So the way we desensitize those is we make those triggers mean nothing. Okay. So we might put our coat on, we take it off again. We put our coat on, we sit down and just do some work at our computer. We put our coat on, we go and sit in the garden. We put our coat on, then we take it off, we hand it to our partner. And the same with your boots, same with your keys, whatever it is in your trigger map that is making your chihuahua go, oh, they're going out now, and arousal up, you need to desensitize. And the only way to do this is by performing those actions, tiny, tiny little steps, and then not having the outcome that your chihuahua is predicting. Okay. Now, obviously, you still need to go out. Okay. You still need to go out while we're working on this behavior. And you're going to need to take the kids to school. You're going to need to do the shopping. You might need to go to work, whatever. Although we did talk yesterday about you might have to kind of take some time off to focus on this, because if your dog is rehearsing this anxiety every day, every time you go out, then you are going to find it harder to deal with. But what we do when we have to do something, because that's life, we're going to create some throwaway triggers. Okay. Now, these are triggers that we are going to allow our dog to associate with the behavior they don't like. Okay. And then as we work through the training to get our dogs more used to us going out, we're going to dispose of them. So what I would suggest you do is you go to the charity shop and you get yourself quite a distinctive coat, or maybe a hat, or some boots, or some rubber welly boots, or something like that. And this is what you wear when you are going out. You don't have to wear them when you're out the door and out of the dog's sight. Okay. Although I would love to see your pictures of your throwaway garb. So you're going to put your hat on, and you're going to put your funny coat on, and your whatever it is, and then you're going to go out the door, and then you can take them off. So that your dog starts to associate those triggers with the behavior he doesn't want. Okay, the thing that's causing him anxiety. And then as we go through the training and your dog becomes more able to cope, we just dispose of them. Okay, just take them back to the charity shop, or put them in the recycling, or whatever it is you want to do. Okay, because while you're using these disposable triggers, you can actually then still be desensitizing the other triggers that are normally associated with your everyday walk. So I kind of hope that makes sense. Okay, so getting some disposable triggers in there is going to be really helpful. Okay, let's just move that off. Okay, now there are some games, some basic games that I want you to teach your dog to help them start to understand that they don't need to be with you every day. And we also need to build optimism for our dogs, okay? Because dogs that are suffering from separation anxiety are probably slightly pessimistic, they're slightly worried, they're kind of always concerned that something bad is going to happen. So we're going to start to grow optimism with our dogs. And to do that, we're going to start playing some interesting little games. Now, one of the problems we have with separation anxiety is our dogs following us about. Okay. And we did talk about this a bit yesterday. And following you about is kind of where separation anxiety can start, and it is not something to encourage. So this is a really useful game that we play, which builds value, because you have to remember dogs will do dogs will do where there's value. They will go where there's value. Okay. And we need to switch the value from following you to maybe just lying on their bed or their boundary. Okay. Now we do that by playing a really simple little game called ninja feeding. Okay. Now, ninja feeding is slightly harder if you've got multiple dogs. So if you've got multiple dogs, you play this with the first dog, and then you rotate the first dog, but you obviously need to treat the other dogs as well. Otherwise, they'd be very, very offended. So your dogs are lying down calmly, and you are going to reward that. You are going to build value in that. Okay. And the way we do that is you're going to find a treat. Okay. Now, obviously, Chihuahuas are really easy to overfeed. So again, there's another whole subject around daily food allowance. You're going to place something on the bed. Okay. You are not feeding the dog. You are feeding the bed, because this is where we want the value to be. Now, what we want is you're just going to feed the bed. You're not going to engage with your dog. You're not going to go, oh, he's a good girl for being really calm and quiet on her boundary. because if you do that, you've created an event, and we don't want that. Okay. So, which I'll explain a bit more in a minute. But you're going to place the food on the bed and you're just going to walk away. Now, what we're trying to do is catch the dog when they're not expecting you to reward the bed. And the more you do this, the more they will start to realize to swap the value from following you around to their bed or their boundary or whatever they're lying on. Now, like I said, if you've got multiple dogs, then you're going to find this is slightly harder, because if one dog is getting fed, the other dogs do have a tendency to look up. So you need to rotate your training from whichever dog, and possibly separate them out so they're not all asleep in the same area and they're not all watching what's going on. Okay. Because again, if they're up and down, what's she doing over there? You're creating an event, which we don't want. So what we're looking for here is just rewarding the bed without any interaction, without any discussion, as you go past and you see your dog doing what you want them to do. Build value in lying on the bed. Now, it used to be a thing at school. I used to be a teacher, and we used to have a thing at school where we would try and catch the children doing the right thing. Okay, rather than telling them off for doing the wrong thing, we would catch them doing the right thing and reward that with praise or whatever. And it's exactly the same. Okay. It's exactly the same example. We want our dogs to build value. And eventually, the more you do this, the more you'll find your dogs following you around less, because there's no value in it, or there's less value in it. The risks of this game is something you need to watch out for. And Minnie, our lovely Minnie on the floor down there, is very, very good at this. Is fake calm. Okay. So she'll be watching me and she'll be lying on a bed going, I'm really calm, mummy, look at me. And I know she's not, because she's not just lying there minding her own business. She's watching me, and she's watching me to see if I'm going to reward the bed. And she's just lying there pretending. Don't reward that. Okay. What we're looking for is when the dog is genuinely in a relaxed state. Okay, so don't let them trick you. They are really clever, and I do admire her effort and her work ethic, but we don't really want to reward that. Okay, so ninja feeding is a really super little game to start building with your Chihuahua to stop them following you around. And we're also going to introduce some baby gates, and I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, another really cool game, let me just remove that, is scatter feeding in the garden. I talk about this a lot. This is one of my lot's favorite games. And sometimes when I'm being really mean, I make what I'm scattering really small, so they really have to hunt for it. Now, Chihuahuas like to hunt, or all dogs like to hunt for their food. Okay, all dogs will do this. So it's good for their mental health. It's called contra-free loading. And a dog, it's in their DNA to hunt and scavenge. So, and when we deny that to them sometimes, we're doing them a disservice. So we are going to throw some food, part of their daily food allowance, onto the grass, and we're just going to let them hunt for it. Now, you might need to build this up. Not every dog is going to be able to hunt over the whole garden. Macy will. She'll come in, and she's had an inch of snow on her head before, where she's been so engaged in looking for the tiniest little scrap in the garden. But you might have to grow this with your dog and just create a small area, sprinkle some food, and let them have a little hunt for it. Okay, so that's scatter feeding. Now, I'll explain why these games are useful as we progress. Okay. Now, another one, which I don't have a slide for, I'm not entirely sure why, is a game called Cardboard Chaos, which again, it's like a treasure hunt, and you collect all your boxes and your recycling, and you're going to create a small pile depending on your dog's ability and how confident they are, and you're going to bait you're going to bait that pile of cardboard with some of their daily food allowance. So you sprinkle it all around, and then your dog is going to go in and hunt for the food, moving in and out of the boxes and moving around them. Now, the reason this is good, one, it's a good confidence game, because the dog is having to put their head into things, they're having to move around things that are going to move, and just generally around these objects and stuff that they might not be familiar with. Now, you can add another layer to this when they're used to it by putting crinkly paper in there, putting plastic bottles in there, things that might make a noise. You might add um, some novelty, some things that they're not familiar with, like a big umbrella or something like that. So you're kind of creating this course on this treasure hunt where your dog is moving in and out of things they're not familiar with. So cardboard chaos is a really good game. These scatter feeding and cardboard chaos are games that your dog is going to play in away from you. Okay. Now, what I'm not suggesting you do, what at the first stage of this, is you set this up and then go away and have a cup of coffee because your dog may well panic. Okay. And then if you do that, you might start them thinking, okay, when I do this, my human's going to move. You don't want them to make that link. Okay. So you're going to be there, you're going to be present, okay? You're going to be around when they're doing it. You're going to be encouraging it, um, and kind of getting involved, maybe helping them by pointing out bits of food that they've missed and stuff like that. Okay. So cardboard chaos, super game to play. And these two games help them move away from you. It helps them work and think independently of you. Another good game to play, very similar to scatter feeding, is having your chihuahua on a lead and creating before they go out there and creating like a little trail of food around the garden and then just moving them around and pointing to a piece of food. There's a bit, get it? There's a bit, get it? So that the dog again is kind of focused on what's going on the ground, not necessarily worrying everything that you're going to do. So there's those little games are going to help build optimism, which is what our dog is missing, and a bit of confidence. Now, there are hundreds of games, especially in Chihuahua School, that will help your dog build confidence. So if they are lacking in confidence, that is something that we can work on separately. Okay, so those games are going to help our dog move away from us. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So before we really start our training, those are some things I want to put in place. Another really important thing is, so I was waving my hand around here like a puppet. Sorry, keep it still. Another really important thing is the door. Okay, now we mentioned yesterday that doors can cause dogs all sorts of problems. Okay, we want less crazy behavior at the door, so we want to build calmness around the door. Um, so one of the things we're going to do is I want you to prevent access to the door just with a baby gate, a barrier, or something like that, so that your dog can't go rushing up to the door every time there's activity around the door, because this again is pushes up anxiety and just creates this rehearsal of anxiety around the door. Now, what happens when you come in the front door is we all normally go, oh, how are you? Have you been a good doggy? I've missed you, all the rest of it. We need to stop doing that. Okay. And everybody does it. And I honestly, I've lost clients over this. Okay. Because they cannot not speak to their dog the minute they come in. But what we really want to build is this golden 5 minutes. And this is the same when you're going to go out as well. Okay. We're not going to go out and go, oh, bye bye, mummy misses you. Oh, be good. I love you. And all the rest of it. Because the dog isn't going to go, oh, it's okay. Go on, go. I've got this. Okay. It's not going to happen. Okay. What's actually happening is the dog's going, oh my God, she's anxious. Oh my God, she's worried. So the dog's anxiety is going up as well. Okay. They're never going to go, yeah, okay, off you go. I've got this. I know you're coming back. Okay. Not going to happen. So coming in and going out is done without any interaction with your dog. Okay. Very, very hard to do. Okay. So one, your dog isn't going to have access to the front door, so you can get in the door without them all jumping and leaping around you. You're going to just ignore them. Okay. You're going to go in, maybe put the kettle on, take your coat off, or whatever it is you're going to do. No interaction with your dog. Okay. They might be going crazy, but we're just going to do our best just to ignore that. Okay. Another thing we always do when we come in is we let the dogs out for a wee. It's not always a good idea to do that straight away because they start to associate the front door with needing to wee. So when you come in, it's just the golden 5 minutes. Okay. And then when they're feeling calmer, and they will get calmer over time, the more you do this, then go and let them out for a wee. Then say hello to them if you must. But it would be really better just to come in and it not be an event, because the more events you create for your dog, the more reactions you're going to get. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. But I really do know that it's hard for people and they kind of go, there's no way I could not speak to my dog when I come in. But I don't. I kind of come in and Prince, it's always Prince, right? He's always the one that's kind of, you home now, nap, 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 nap. And I just ignore him, okay? And he is getting better. He does find it, "Oh, she's in, is she?" And then he just get on, and that's what I want. And I know it's hard, but I don't want him to feel, "Oh my God, thank God she's home. I thought I was gonna die. No one was ever gonna feed me again," and all that malarkey, okay? So the golden 5 minutes when you come in and not creating an event when you leave is really super important, okay? Now, um, let's have a look at this. So some games that we're going to play that are, let me just move this to the stage. Some games that we're going to start to play, which is actively working on your dog's ability to stay away from you. Now, there are three things involved in, or three concepts we need to think about when we're dealing with separation anxiety is time, distance, and visibility. Now, when we go back to our old model of just popping in and popping out, we are throwing all three of those concepts at our dog at once. Okay, we've got time because we're just going away and the dog doesn't know how long you're going to be. We've got distance because you're just completely distancing yourself from the dog and expecting them to cope. And then you've got visibility because the dog can't see you. And we haven't given them the skills to gently learn how to cope with that in stages. So we are going to use these games here to, sorry, words. We're going to use these games here to start to build that up. Actually, before I do that one, I just actually wanted to show you something else. Hang on, Louise. Right, let's make this one go away. Remove. This is another one. Okay, another key concept before we start playing those games is presence doesn't mean access. Okay, now again, we all do this. We're home and the dog's allowed to sit on your lap. They're allowed to jump all over you. They can get as close as they like to you and all that kind of stuff. Now, that again makes it quite difficult for your dog to disengage from you. They need to learn just because you're there doesn't mean that they can jump all over you, sit on your lap or whatever. And we need to teach our dogs appropriate contact, okay, if you will. Now, does that impact on whether we should let our dog sleep on the bed? I'm going to say it probably does. Okay. Now, I don't mind my dogs on the bed. I don't have a problem with that. And it's whatever works for your lifestyle. But if your dog has really bad separation anxiety, you might gently want to start incorporating this into it as well. And I'm not talking about going cold turkey and just going, right, you're going to sleep downstairs in a crate, because that's never going to work. But it might be a good idea to start gently moving them off the bed into a compromised situation, which in my view, which is what my dogs do, would be just a bed on the floor. So they sleep upstairs with us, but they have a bed on the floor. There is actually on the blog, I've just written a fairly recent blog about should your dog sleep with you. But it might look like this. So say you're working from home and your dog is used to being right by your side. We might just slightly move ourselves away, put the dog behind a barrier, okay, and be working on our computer. The dog can see you. You're available, but they're not going to come and sit on your lap or be right under your feet, okay? So presence doesn't mean access. Means just because you're there doesn't mean the dog is going to be allowed to jump all over you. Now that could be the same for watching the TV at night, okay, because the dog wants to sit on your lap. Now, if they've got chronic separation anxiety, it might be a good idea if we could grow the confidence for them to sit on the floor in a bed on the floor at your feet, okay, rather than having them have to be completely in your face. Now, if your dog doesn't have separation anxiety, then that's fine. Let them sit on your lap. That's not a problem. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying be mindful of, is the contact you have with your Chihuahua creating or paying into this inability to disengage from you and to work independently. Okay. Now, I'm not saying never cuddle your Chihuahua again. I'm not saying don't make a fuss of your Chihuahua again. It just needs to be appropriate. Okay. Also, should you be carrying your Chihuahua everywhere? Again, there's a blog post about that on the blog, how much you should carry your dog. It really is better if the more paws on the floor you can have, unless your chihuahua's in danger or they can't actually reach what they're trying to do, that they are paws on the floor, okay? Because that helps them grow confidence and it helps them negotiate the environment. If you're constantly carrying them everywhere they go, not only do they lose muscle tone, but it just makes them anxious whenever you put them down. So paws on the floor as much as possible. Anyway, so presence doesn't mean access. Start to think about, are you over handling your dog? Are you over carrying them? Are you over mollycoddling them? Do they have too much access to you? Okay. Start to do things that help them grow some independence. Okay, so let's just remove her and have a look at this. Okie doke. So these games, and that's what they are games. Okay, so it's really important that we are not putting the dog under any kind of pressure whatsoever. Okay, now that is not the right slide. So let's, Louise, right. So we're not putting the dog under any pressure whatsoever, and we are also not going to do too much so it becomes a chore for you and a chore for the dog, and we are not going to push this forward too quickly. We're going to work on the stages so that our chihuahua has a time to adapt and learn, and basically we're rewiring neural pathways, and that isn't going to happen in one session. So the first thing we're going to do is, this is just literally a 30-second game, okay? We need a barrier, like a baby gate or something like that, and you need some food, okay? Food should come out of their daily food allowance, otherwise they're going to get fat. And what we're building, we're looking here at time, okay? Because we're not going to throw all of these concepts at our dog at once. So we are going to be behind our barrier, and the dog is going to be the other side of the barrier, and you're just going to throw a little bit of food, not too far. Okay, we're not trying to make the dog go as far as possible. We just initially want to introduce this I've got something to do that is slightly away from you. Okay, so you're going to throw the food in there fairly close to the barrier with a get it. Okay, nice happy little get it, and you're going to send your dog out. Now, what we're not going to do is, we're going to not, when the dog comes back, we're not going to mark that. Okay, we're not going to encourage that back to you, which is what we would do if we were teaching our dog proximity and to stay with you when you're out on a walk. So we're just going to throw the food in, get it, okay, and you're going to do that a couple of times, and that might be the end of that session. 30 seconds. Okay, so moving on from there, we would then just move the dog out a bit. Okay, we're just going to throw the food slightly further out. The dog can still see you, and you are still close to the gate. Okay, we're looking at time, the time the dog can be away from you. Now, you might not need to tap into this training at this point. It depends how stressed your chihuahua is, and how difficult they find it to disengage from you. So you're going to tap into this training at the point that is suitable for your dog. Okay. So this would be stage 2. So this is throw the food out slightly further away with get it, okay? And then they'll run back to you, and then you're going to throw the food out again, get it, and they'll run back to you. But don't mark that run back to you with good boy or good girl or anything like that, because we are not growing the dog coming back to you. We're growing the dog moving away from you, okay? I hope that makes sense. So this is very much the first level, okay? So then what we might do is we might introduce a barrier, okay? So we're going to then throw the food behind a box, okay? And then your dog's going to scurry out, and they're going to eat food behind the box. So again, this is kind of all built in stages, okay? So that's the first one. That is time. That might take you over a week to achieve, okay? It depends on your dog, but it might be that your dog doesn't need this first stage, okay? You tap in where it is suitable for your dog. Level 2 is going to look like this. So we're going to repeat all 3 of those stages, but you are going to be further away from the gate. So now we're looking at distance. We're looking at your distance from the dog. So you're going to send the food out with a get it, okay? And then you're going to move through all 3 of those scenarios till the point where your dog is moving and eating something behind the box away from you, okay? Then level 3, I think that's what we would be on, is we would reduce, let me just get rid of that. No, it's not going to go. There we go. We're going to reduce the visibility with a towel. Okay, so we've worked on time and we've worked on distance, and now we're going to work on visibility. So we are going to cover the gate with a towel, and we're going to just repeat the same thing. So we're going to throw the food over, get it, and then just slightly move through all the sequence until you're throwing the food away, and then they're going behind a box. So we're kind of working on our visibility there. Now you can see how we're growing all of these concepts. Okay, now once your dog is quite happy doing that, then we would start to think about something like this. So we might set up the dog in a room with the lack of visibility through the towel, and then we have them on a lick mat, we have them on a snuffle mat, or eating a Kong or chewing a bone. Okay, so they can't see you, you're still there, but they can't see you. And what we're looking for is a longer term activity. Okay, so we want them to settle out of your sight, able to do something. Now, one of the things people say is they go, okay, well, I'll give my dog a bone or something like that. And then the minute they finished it, they're back whining and they're back with their anxiety again. This is because they haven't built the other stages. They've just given their dog a bone or something like that and then expected them just to cope with that. But here we're building the layers in between. We're giving them the skills they need in between. So we're going to give them a longer term thing to do. Okay. Now from that, we would then maybe take the barrier down. Okay. And we might settle them on their bed and with something to do. And we might just move about. Okay. So you might be sitting down and then gently stand up. What we're looking for is our dog being able to stay engaged with what they're doing without the need to get up and follow you and see what you're doing. So you can kind of see how you're going to build this for your dog. Okay. And then you're going to just gently. Okay. And if at any point your Chihuahua can't cope, then that isn't a fail. Never think you failed in dog training. That's just information. Once something isn't going right, it's just information that your dog's not there yet and that you need to go back a stage, and you probably just need to do a little bit more work there. Okay. So if you find when you take the barrier down and you start moving around, etc., that your dog can't cope, then just go back a stage. Okay. You might need to go back to your ninja feeding. You might need to do some more scatter feeding, or you might just need to start this sequence back with time or back with distance again. Okay. So you can see how you build this game up for your dog and for what they can cope with. Then there's one thing I did actually forget to say actually is when you do go out is film your dog so you can actually see what they're doing and know what they're dealing with. Kind of should have said that at the beginning, but anyway. So these are the concepts and these are the ways I would start to train out this idea that the dog cannot disengage from you and that when you're not there, they're really anxious. If you add this in with the other things that we've talked about, the growing calmness and helping your dog into a calmer headspace, making sure that they've got lots of sleep, etc., stop them following you around, reduce anxiety at the door, and presence doesn't mean access, so they can't jump all over you the minute you're home. And that little golden 5 minutes when you come in, and these games, you should start to see a shift away from your Chihuahua being able to disengage from you and spend more time with you. Build it up slowly. Okay, we're not looking at putting our dog in a situation that they don't have the skills for. So build it up really slowly. Okay, so that is kind of like a whistle stop tour. There are other things that you can do to help reduce separation anxiety. We have a full course on this in Chihuahua School that will go over everything in detail and show you some really cool games that you can play to help you reduce this separation anxiety for your dog. But one thing I will say to you is prevention is better than cure. Okay, do not grow this with your puppy. Okay, do not encourage them to follow you about. start playing independence away games from you as soon as they're old enough to go, they can go out in the garden, but you can play them in the house anyway. So just independence away from you as puppies will save you so much heartache, because this is a really tedious thing to have to train out, especially looking at your triggers, especially if you have to desensitize a gazillion triggers that your dog's built into everything that you're doing. Okie doke. So we've been going for nearly 3/4 of an hour now. So you're probably absolutely fed up with the sound of my voice. So I'm going to stop there. Okay. But if you need more help, if you need more support, then please join us in the Chihuahua School. It's a monthly subscription of £36. You can leave whenever you want. You get all the information straight away. It's not drip fed out to you. You can have a look at what you want and get involved when you want. We have monthly Zoom calls, ask me anythings, and support. And we obviously you know about the Chihuahua community because you're in it. So if you are having problems, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's separation anxiety or aggression or whatever, or you just want to build your dog's confidence up, teach them some tricks or something like that, then do join us in Chihuahua School. It's monthly. You can come and go as you please. And I would absolutely love to see you and love to support you there. Okie doke. So I'm going to leave you there. I hope you've got value here. Please put it in the comments if you've got value here. I love to hear your feedback. And if you've got any questions about anything that I've talked about today, then please put them in the comments and I will go through them and answer your questions. Okie doke. So it's goodbye from me and have a fantastic rest of day.